Hi, I'm Rob. Welcome to Hobby Phase, part of the 5th Trooper Network. In this video, we're going to be building and painting the current saviour of the Rebel Alliance, Han Solo, on his Tauntaun. Han's been great in game for a little while now, and I couldn't wait to get him to the table, and he does have a big impact on game. As with all these AMG kits, he went together no problem whatsoever. I simply clip him off the sprue, scrape off any little mould lines and glue it all together with some Tamiya ultra thin plastic cement. In hindsight, I think it would have been better to leave Han off of the Tauntaun for painting, simply because the neck and the face of the Tauntaun get in the way a little bit when you're trying to paint the body, making brush access quite awkward. So if you are doing this at home, maybe I'd do that and then just glue him on at the end. But it didn't present the biggest problem in the world. Whilst I'm building and gluing this together, I'd like to take a moment just to mention the 5th Trooper Network. If you are enjoying our content, our battle reports, podcasts and hot takes on all the latest competitive Legion, do consider liking, subscribing or even joining our Patreon. There'll be a link in the description below. Despite being a larger model, I did find this went together and painted up very, very quickly. It was very little effort actually. We're going to look at a couple of different techniques in this video, looking at some wet blending and dry brushing, which I haven't done loads of on the channel before, as well as a different way to freehand your bases. I decided to leave the tactical rock that he comes with off of the model because it doesn't really fit my basing theme, which I'm going to do in a sci-fi way because that's how all my rebels are based. So I just blue tack him straight to my painting handle and give him a quick prime, brilliantly in a shade of grey that is exactly the same as the plastic, and therefore made life quite awkward working out where I'd primed and where I hadn't. For our fur, we're going to start it off with a quick wet blend. If you haven't tried wet blending before, a fur texture is actually a really good place to start, as it will hide any mistakes on the texture. So I start off by laying down some ivory, and then I go back in very quickly before the paint's had a chance to set up with some vampiric flesh, and just blend the two together on the model. It gives us a really smooth transition, really easily, really quickly. It doesn't take much time at all. I did find I needed to go back and do a second coat of this just to really establish those transitions, but again we're talking a few minutes here, very little work at all. And you can already see we're getting a little bit of that contrast in the fur just to help show the shapes of the model, make it readable at distance in game. Then I took some burnt umber by AK, thinned it right down, and just glazed it into the spots I wanted the darkest on the model. And in this case, those were just the ones facing the ground, basically. So my lightest parts are facing the sun, and my darkest parts are facing the ground. I then took some off-white, again by AK, and did a quick dry brush over all of the fur, just to pick out some of the detail, and really show us its fur. Again, this will help some of the blending in case any of your wet blends or your glazing were a little rough. As I was doing this, I realised it was a good opportunity to get the horns and claws done, so I simply painted them in intense black by AK and then carried on with the dry brushing and allowed the dry brushing to pick out the details for us. And that's our fur done in no time at all. I think it looks really effective. It was really quick and easy. For the leather parts, we're going to use another speedy method by levering the transparent properties of contrast paint, speed paint, anything similar to that. So I start off by base coating in a dark brown, in this case Cygor brown by Citadel. I then go back in and make loads of dots and scratches all over the leather where I think it would be most worn, using some desert painter by Army Yellow, but again any sort of off yellow colour would do here. And then I re-establish those highlights slightly smaller with some ice yellow by AK, just to really exaggerate them. To then smooth those transitions, I take Snakebite leather or similar light brown speed or contrast paint and mix it with water and glaze it over all the surfaces. The reason I mix it with water rather than a contrast medium is I don't want it to pool and go into the recesses. I want an even coating. So we're just getting the transparent properties. I then actually repeat the process just to really smooth all those transitions out. I guess that step's optional. For me, the face and eyes of the Tauntaun are going to be where I want people's focus to go, so it's going to be where I spend most of the time. I'm going quite hyper realistic with this, so I'm going to mix together some Dirty Red by AK and some Sunny Skin Tone to get a base colour for our Tauntaun's face, and I slap that all over the face of the Tauntaun. I then realise I haven't painted the eyes of the model. You should always do the eyes before the skin. I always make this mistake. So I get some Ivory, but any sort of off-white colour will do, and I go in and base coat the eyes in Ivory. The reason we use an off-white colour rather than a pure white is a pure white will look too shocking and draw the eye to it too much. These Tauntaun eyes are really good if you're wanting to practice painting eyeballs, because they are a little bit larger, well actually quite a lot larger than most models within Legion. I then take some Adriatic blue from scale 75 and use that to paint my eyeball in. Really carefully here, really make sure you get your brush as fine as you can. Take your time, take a deep breath out, steady hand, and paint it in. The worst that happens is you have to paint over it and go again. And then, because the eyes are quite large, we can do a pupil and an iris on this. So we're going to just get some intense black and carefully just dot that in the middle there. Then to make it look a little more realistic, I want to take some Gulliman flesh and I'm going to put that around the waterline of the eye and just into the corners of the eye so it looks ever so slightly bloodshot. Off camera, I decided to put that Gulliman flesh over the whole of the Tauntaun's face just to give us a nice deep colour, because I did feel that Sunny Skin Tone Dirty Red mix was a little too light, and you can see that here much more clearly. So I go back to my original mix of Dirty Red and Sunny Skin Tone and start establishing all my highlights on the face where I want it. And basically the way I'm picking that is anywhere that faces upwards or anywhere that sticks out gets a highlight. Take your time with this. We want it to be the focal point of the model, so we want to have as much contrast as possible. And then take pure Sunny Skin Tone on its own and go back over all my highlights, covering about half of them up with the Sunny Skin Tone. I do a little stippling around the nose area just to make it look a bit textured, and maybe there's some whiskers or something like that coming out of there. And as a final highlight, I take some ice yellow and I'm going to go over and just do a little more stippling on the nose, picking out a few of my highlights in the select places just to really make it pop. So our darkest colour is that dark reddy brown of the Gulliman flesh, and our brightest is the ice yellow. By having loads of contrast in the face, it will draw people's attentions to it. I then realised I've forgotten to paint the horns, and I'm going to do them the same as I did the, I was going to say toenails, the claws of the Tauntaun, which is intense black, and then dry brush some of that ivory over it. It's a bit of a hack this, but I think it looks quite effective. It takes no time. It would be better to do this step when you're doing the fur, just so you don't risk getting any paint over that face you've just spent all the time on. So according to Isaac from the 5th Trooper podcast, I've messed up Han's jacket in that I painted it blue. I like it blue and I'm not going to go back and repaint it. So I start off with some dark Prussian blue and paint it all over his body. Also, I don't think my Tauntauns are on Hoth. They're fighting in a space station somewhere, so it's fine to be non-canonical, right? I then highlight the jacket, all my upward facing angles pointing towards the sun. I'm going to highlight first off in some light Prussian blue. My next highlight is going to be mixing together some of that off-white that I've got on the palette with some of the dark Prussian blue, and go back in and cover up a little bit more of my highlights like I did in the previous step. At this point I'll start to make sure I'm picking out the tops of pockets, cuffs on the jacket, that sort of thing, to make them really stand out. And effectively I can keep repeating this process, adding in increasing amounts of off-white until I'm happy with the result. And you can see that last stage is really beginning to make the jacket pop. It's given us loads of contrast in there. I'm not bothering about blending it. I don't think you need to at this scale. Just nice sharp lines will do it. For all the metal parts, I'm going to do a really quick and dirty non-metallic metal. So I've base coated them black, and then I'm going to put some of that light Prussian blue over them to make them look like they're reflecting some of our blue atmosphere. I then mix together some of the off-white and the black just to get a nice grey tone, and I put that over the model. On the flat metal parts, we want that to be at the bottom rather than the top, unlike any other highlighting we've done, just because of the way metal interacts with light. I'm putting these on quite scratchy. I'm imagining they're worn, used bits of metal, not super smooth and clean. Because I've messed up all the off-white that was already on my palette, I'm going to add a little bit more in and then go back in on those metals and put the off-white just as my final highlight, and make sure I edge highlight everything in that off-white just to make it really readable and really define the shapes. For his trousers, we're going to do those super quick and easy. We're going to start off by base coating them in some Tenebrous grey. Mixing in some ice yellow. In this case we could have used the off-white. I'm using the ice yellow because it was on the palette and nearby. Set up a little gradient there, and I'm going to put in a bunch of scratchy highlights just on the top of his thigh. I want to make sure that every aspect of the model has some stage of highlighting and shading, even if it's not a focal point, because that helps it be readable at distance. And you know, we do want to render our models nicely. And then I mix a bit of the off-white in this time just to give a final highlight. So I've got, 3-4 stages of contrast on there. Because this is a dark trouser, we're keeping these highlights really small, really effectively edge highlighting here just to define the shape. For his boots, I'm going to use some warm grey by AK, and I just quickly slather that all over the boots. Then we've had to clean up my palette because I made such a mess of it. I'm going to take some burnt umber by AK, thinned down to a wash consistency with some water, and just dump that over the boots so we can see the sort of wrappings or bandages, or there won't be bandages, although there's some sort of wrappings he's got on his feet there. And that just helps us see the shape of it with no effort at all. So at this point I realise I've made a mistake whilst I'm painting Han. I don't know how or when I've done it, but I've snapped the barrel off his gun. Having spoken to a few people, I think it's relatively common. I think I've got a fix for it though, so I'm going to take a little bit of styrene rod I have on hand and a little bit of packaging from some grass tufts, and I'm going to glue those together, and I think I've got a workable fix for his gun. For the base, if you've watched any of my previous videos, you know I'll paint my rebels as if they're on a space station, or in my head, some sort of Corellian starport. And I'm going to do that here. I've done it previously with a brush and wet blending. Today I'm going to show you how to do that with the airbrush. So start off by sanding all the texture, or most of the texture, off of the base, just to make it easier to freehand over. Make sure I carve in my firing arcs, because Legion has firing arcs, before remembering that Tauntauns do not, so that was a wasted step. My first step is to prime the base black. My next step is going to be to start establishing some highlights very quickly with the airbrush. So I'm going to use off-white and just spray that on where I want the highlights. This is going to look really odd at first, but it comes together very, very quickly. If you don't own an airbrush, I did show how to do this with a brush and some wet blending in my Rebel Officer video. So, look back on the playlist, I'm sure you'll find it. As you can see, I'm establishing highlights here. I want to have very bright spots and then very dark spots. I then start putting shapes in so it looks like panels on a space station, or at least that's what it looks like in my head. And I'm going to establish those just with some intense black and a brush very quickly. And I want to paint some interesting shapes on here. I also use the firing arcs as a guideline of where to paint these. Again, still looking a bit rough at the moment, but it will come together quite quickly. The next step's to get the airbrush back out, and I'm going to use electric blue through it this time, which is a fluorescent colour from scale 75. What I'm trying to do here is put the electric blue where the gradient between the darkest and lightest patches that I've previously airbrushed is. Because obviously I've sprayed all over the black lines I established earlier, I'm going to go back in and repaint those, re-establish them. I then edge highlight each of these black lines with some off-white by AK. And this starts to make the base take shape, really. This is a case of just steady hand, deep breath in, do the best you can. It's going to look a bit hand painted, and I'm okay with that. I want it to look painted. And you can see once I've got all those lines on, it suddenly looks a bit more sci-fi and a bit more how we want it to look. And then my final step is to start painting on loads of little scratches all over the base to suggest it's a bit worn, a bit used, maybe there's been a fight on it. And I do that by stippling or making really, really fine lines in some off-white, and then I also use a little bit of blue-grey by AK to do this as well, just to give a bit more contrast. I really like the way these bases look. They're a little bit comic book, and for me that suits me well. However, if you want something less comic book, swap out the electric blue for a less saturated colour, perhaps a dark sea blue or something similar to that. That's Han done. He's been a joy to paint, took no time at all, happy with my gun barrel repair, and he plays brilliantly in game as well. If you enjoy the content we're putting out on 5th Trooper, do consider liking, subscribing and joining our Patreon. I'll put a link in the description below. Thanks for watching.